This episode is proudly supported by OpenTable.
Nearly 1/3 of diners are booking same day. So they're making those decisions on the spot. And 10% are making their bookings within just a few hours. And so it's why it's so important to have booking software like OpenTable, which allows your diners to discover you. And so when restaurants are on platforms like OpenTable, they're much more likely to be discovered. We help diners to connect to restaurants. Ultimately, having technology, using technology, helps you to reattach to those diners.
Experience the power of OpenTable. For an exclusive offer, visit restaurant.opentable.com.au/DITW.
Usually there's a lot of chefs in the same room and they're all so passionate about the same thing and especially just, picking apart those dishes, picking apart those ingredients. And when they meet the farmer that's actually provided the product that's put on that plate, it's, they're usually very intrigued.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Born into a family with a rich, multi-generation farming background, Vaughn Schutlz grew up in the most fascinating surrounds. When he became an adult, he left to embrace city living. But when it came time to start his own family, the past pulled him back to the family farm, where he now produces some of the most extraordinary pork in Australia. Vaughn, the Schultz Family Farm, has been operating since the 1800s. What's it like being a farmer with such a rich history?
Oh, well, I guess, a bit of an obligation. It is, a big part of it. Like you said, our family, they came here as part of the late 1800s immigration from Prussia, where we are north of Toowoomba. It was very similar to Barossa, and in that era, they, the families emigrated all at sort of once. And my 1894 was when my great grandfather settled on this particular property, and they came with the knowledge of milk and dairy and pigs, and that first generation, the first thing they did was clear ground to raise crops and make make a space for the dairy, and started milking, and they would process their whey through pigs and send the cream through to the butter factories and cheese factories, and then put the pork on the train and send it through to Darling Downs. My great grandfather is actually one of sort of the founding members of the Darling Downs Baking Co-op, which started up in the early 1900s, and it was a farmers collective where they all chipped in and created a little bacon factory in Toowoomba there, and they'd ship the bacon is on the train through to be processed there, and then onto the Brisbane market to be consumed in Brisbane.
Do you have any yarns that have been passed over generations from the family of the experiences of farming?
Oh, look, every generation did it differently. Like some of the things my great grandfather did were absolutely amazing, because pigs are only one part of what we do. Like I said, they did dairying, and it's not an uncommon story for families in this region. A lot of the original old dairies had also piggeries associated with it, so to process the excess dairy ways and things like that. And also where we are is on the cusp of the Darling Downs, which is one of the most amazing grain growing regions on earth, and the bounties of the wheat and barley fields and things like that. It's really, and the temperature as well, it really lends itself to to actually growing pigs. So all those things combined, and I guess a bit of tradition that they brought over. And so the early guys they did it very rustically, that's for sure. They didn't have electricity and even engines at the start, and they just, where we are is a forest, sort of a little bit of an old growth forest. They only cleared about 30% of the property, and in that forest we would run pigs and use to harvest the timbers and basically sort of was a multi-purpose, sort of multi-use farm. And and then the second generation, my great grandfather, then they electrified, and he continued doing dairying, and right through to the sort of the 80s. Then in the 80s there was a bit of deregulation in the industry, and my family went out of doing commercial fresh milks, but then what preceded that was sort of one of the worst droughts sort of in living memory, the sort of the late 80s through the 90s. The whole eastern seaboard, sort of even particularly this region, was destocked, and there was multiple years of drought where basically there was nothing to be done. And I guess that's sort of where my story started. And I was born in '79, so growing up in the '80s, I always knew I'd come out to the farm, and like that. By then they'd finished their commercial milking, but and it wasn't great seasons. But I spent many a year with Dad mucking around, fixing up fences, and clearing out brush, and getting things ready, and doing up the old homestead and things like that. And so that's sort of we definitely had a lot of early memories, sort of being taken out to farm while my grandparents were here, and Dad would start doing sort of more serious work with the farming, and then at that time. It was, like I said, bad time for the, weather-wise. So everyone was sort of encouraged to have a off-farm job, off-farm trade, and Dad was working off-farm, but still pottering around doing things, getting things ready. And I started. I went to school, and I was encouraged to do something off-farm, and I was into technical drawing, and at that time it was sort of a fledgling part of the industry with computers just sort of happening, and I enjoyed that. So I was encouraged to go to university, and I enjoyed and went to studied architecture.
What are your fondest memories of growing up on the farm?
Oh, wow. Well, look, animals, I guess, like there's so many quirky stories with animals. Growing up, we were always mucking around with cows. We were always mucking around with pigs. They always break in the wrong paddock. They're always doing rascally things. You know what I mean? Like, you're always helping them birth. You're always helping them die. You're always, it's sort of a big part of animal husbandry sort of takes a big part of your attention when you're working with animals, and especially when it's your own. If you're an employee, I guess it's different. But for us, we sort of live it 24/7. Where we live is sort of as within 200 meters of the piggery, and within 100 meters of where the cattle birthing yards are, and it's not uncommon to pop up at 2 a.m. because of some sort of sound that you hear or something like that. You're sort of very, very conscious, and you care a lot about what your animals are doing.
When was the moment that you realised that you wanted to work on the farm and be in the family business away from architecture?
I guess that was probably the time I met my beautiful wife. Like at the time, we were living the cosmopolitan lifestyle. I was working in Brisbane City, living on the 14th floor of Charlotte and Albert, and eating out every night, and because it was cheaper than actually buying groceries, and just doing everything a double income no kids wanted to do. But ultimately, when it came, when I met the right woman, and we decided that we wanted to choose to have children, I knew that wasn't the lifestyle I wanted to expose my children to. I grew up, in a place where nature was all encompassing, not like the built environments where, nature is permitted. And I think it makes a big difference on attitudes of people. So I always did want to raise my children in, a natural environment. I also, like I said, had at the back of my head the obligation that as the eldest son, I would have to one day, come back to the family farm and make sure I understood how it worked and how things worked, and that I guess, like I said, coincided with meeting the correct woman and being at that phase in life. So that's what we did. We organised a transfer. I moved up to Toowoomba and started working out of their regional office there, and that was quite close to where the homestead was. So I had the liberty of driving in and working in town, but then also coming out to the farm. And the first thing we did was set up a little homestead. The original homestead that we are actually living in was built in the 1900s, but over the years decayed a little bit, and it's sort of been an ongoing project for me and my father over the years. And And ultimately, we often had tenants in it, and it just coincided that with the tenant, the long-term tenant that left, coincided with when we were thinking about doing this. And so we came back out, and first thing we did was, mucked around with the house, renovated, made it livable. And then second thing we did was, got the gardens working, chickens. I wanted my kids to experience all the things I did growing up. So, having and raising your own chickens, eating your own eggs, and also having your own house cow. Having a house cow that you milk, that, you get fresh, raw milk daily on tap. It was something I experienced growing up, and I wanted my children to experience. So, we just basically are motivated just to do the homesteady thing, to be honest. We sort of came up and we wanted to live as independently and off-grid sort of lifestyle. And both and I have sort of very good or green attitudes, if you know what I mean, without, harping on about it. But, we just wanted to live as simply as possible, and raise our kids in that environment. And then came along my introduction to the food service industry. But so pigs are always a small part, but a part of what we did. We'd always have, a few we were traditionally a farrowing operation. So we would have a few girls that we would, and a boar, and we would, breed the pigs, and then we'd have a couple for ourselves that would raise for a bit of pork. And the ones that we didn't, we sold to the typical commercial market, just like most people do out here, sort of thing. But that's what we were doing. But then, then came my I guess introduction to the food service industry when I met Benny Williamson.
Tell us about what impact that introduction had. Yeah,
well, it was a bit of a story. I mean, I guess at the time, it was a bit of a chance meeting through a friend of a friend. I think Benny just come to town. We're about the same age. We've got kids about the same age, and he was, going to be the chef in this restaurant that was being opened called Gerard's. And just happened to meet him, and we just clicked straight away. Had very similar attitudes about, just the classic things like when you're homesteading, the taste of your own tomatoes compared to commercial ones, the taste of your own eggs compared to commercial ones, and I was actually amazed that someone also, shared that real passion about direct to the source ingredients and stuff. And we really sort of clicked. And the thing that we're doing there at Gerard's is sort of a really avant-garde sort of Moroccan, southern Spanish sort of feel, modern vibe with a lovely little courtyard. And he'd had experience working with small piglets before, and it was something that we did regularly. So we clicked on that straight away, and I said, I'll come up and have a look. And he sort of, I guess it started it, and we had formed a relationship. I guess it's ongoing to this day. He introduced me to the food service industry. Up till then, I was basically a culinary barbarian. I didn't know much. I toured Italy, but I basically the only thing I ate was pizza margherita. I certainly have educated opinion about how that should taste, but that's about all up until I met someone like Benny. And so we bounced off each other, totally. Like, he introduced me to Rene Redzepi at the time. I don't know if you know the Swedish chef who at the time he was doing like a forage thing. And, because we're in the middle of nature doing all this other stuff. We've got, the forage capabilities are awesome here, let alone what we actually produce. So Benny would come up with his new chefs, and still does regularly, regularly brings and bloods, his team of chefs, and comes up and they do like a little Redzepi sort of experience, and they forage around for different things at various times of the year. We got all sorts of just introduced or native forage greens that are available, like amaranths and, purslanes and warrigal greens and plantains and things like that. Stinging nettle and pepperina, that's always a laugh. They somehow always convince a junior chef to accidentally mishandle those things. And, they come up and, they do a little Redzepi tour and then convince the junior to drive them all home with a full belly and a full heart. It's sort of, it's really, really cool.
What sort of, impact did these connections start having on the pork production and the farming?
Well, straight away we had to, we had an old facility. We've been doing it for years, but it's in the middle of a forest, and anything that man can make and sits there for a little while will be taken back by nature. So we had to basically just we just renovated our facilities, had to resupply the water lines, and basically increased sort of our capabilities to meet his demand. And then, we did all sorts of wacky things in that time. Like the main thing that we were doing was the small pig, the suckling pig, which is sort of it's a bit of avant-garde dish to actually try to source in this region. He loved the idea that he had his own personal farmer, and we were producing it just for specifically tailored for him and just for him. But we experimented with all sorts of wacky things. Like for a time there, we were going to make the Australia's next Hamon. So we went through and tried to collect different breeds. He had me searching for. We got Berkshires and Wessexes and Hampshires, and he had me searching for Patanero, which I didn't know at the time, which is the Iberian Blackfoot, which it took me to embarrass myself to a couple of high-end stud people that it's not even in Australia. It never has been. But we sort of experimented with the different breeds, and then we lined them up with different diets. Where I made a pasture field specifically for them, so that we could do a side-by-side comparison with the free range with the prepared pasture. And then with various breeds, and then also I sourced about a couple of ton of macadamia meal, which where we are is a byproduct of the macadamia industry, which is quite close, and it's a lovely tannin-filled sort of material, which also has a major aroma of the macadamias, and then we finished them on different percentages and things like that, and in order to try to create Australia's next Hamon, if you know what I mean, or but see that process, like when you actually go and select the breed, then actually breed them to the growing age, that's a year, and then he wants them at 100 kilos, which is a bit bigger than the traditional industry, so that takes you extra time. So that's basically another year to processing, and then Hamon takes 24 months to sort of cure. So it's literally a 4-year project, sort of batch by batch. But we did it and enjoyed it and learned, and it taught me a lot of different things about pigs, and we sort of, I guess, psyched each other up and bounced off each other in that way, and basically just grew and enjoyed it, and like my dad and my wife and my son are basically the only sort of employees. It's a little family operation, and Dad's a bit of the head of a reason. I wanted to get into fully into heirloom breeds, but the commercial industry is and markets in general you have to be very careful about where blackhead breeds go and depth of fats and things like that to actually stick if you want to stick into commercial markets. And a lot of people who just say, I want to get into pigs and go into things like that are unawares, can cause themselves a bit of mischief. But so we kept at least 60 or 70% of our stock as commercial whites. But I'm very passionate about just the idea of preserving the heirloom breeds for starters. And I'm a bit of a collector in that regard as well. And we keep a stud line of Berks and Wessexes going, and I've also got still a little bit of Tamworth. And we sort of do a hybridization so that it sort of suits what our environment is. And now we've sort of developed a bit of a tailored diet that we seem to balanced out nicely with production gains versus flavor, and we think we've developed something a little bit unique, especially when we do side by side taste tests with the chefs and things.
Can you tell us a bit about maybe two of the breeds and how different they are to deal with, and the end product as well?
I guess the main thing's fat. With something like a large black, like a lot of the they called them lard breeds back in the old days. So pigs weren't necessarily always just produced for pork. They would actually have fat breeds, and they would use lard for cooking oils, for lighting oils, and other things like that. But a lot of that fell out of favour when they started using whale and stuff like that. So they just focused on the meat production breeds. So a lot of those heirloom breeds disappeared back from England a long time ago. But yeah, the main difference is the fat content. So if you were to put a classic commercial white, which is either a landrace, Dutch landrace, or a English Yorkshire, which is a large white prickhead, they you put them side by side on the same diet with something like a large black. Very big difference in fat profile. You very much have to, which is, I guess, a bit of a benefit for someone who wants to do outdoor heirloom. You can actually you actually sort of have to feed them less because they can get over fat, especially with the girls, with the breeders. But yeah, basically you have to be very conscious and tailor the diets to suit. So that's where we found a bit of a hybridization works very well. But it's very different between your growers and your meat producers. But and I guess also ultimately they take a lot longer. Heirloom breeds just don't have that efficiency of conversion. So you're looking at ultimately a longer time to get to the same weight, which is but the diet has to be tailored specifically for that. But it's all, basically it's very different, and if a girl's lactating, they need more diet, and you sort of tailor it according to what they need and want. What we feed the girls is very different to what we feed the growers. Traditionally, the industry wasn't necessarily like you might hear pig farmers talk about being farrow to finish operations, because both of those things require very different situations, very different facilities, very different diets. And we were always just traditionally a farrowing operation. We would produce the babies and then sell them to someone who had a pork house or something, or, and they would be a finishing operation, didn't muck around with breeding, and they would just bring them in at weaner store, aged sort of about 30 kilo live weight, and then just put them in their pork house for a couple of months and sell them in bacon. And we've only sort of just recently gotten into doing more baconers now. Like we used to do tailored things, like I said, with Benny and other charcuterie makers. We sort of do tailored things for those guys. But now we also do a bit of pork in the forest as well. Silvio-pastoralism is probably a better way to describe it. We have a bit of what we call it Hogwarts, where they graduate for Bacon University. So they get into this different facility where they all, they hang out in the forest and they have everything they need for a couple of months, and then one day graduate onto bacon.
What sort of impact does that 3 months have on them?
Well, you're with them every day, so you'd like to think, I guess, humans anthropomorphize a bit what makes an animal happy or not. But a pig is very vocal. They let you know when they're not happy. That's for sure. Ultimately, if you provide them everything they need and every luxury in regards to food, water, shelter, somewhere to exhibit their natural behaviours, they are actually a little greedy animal. They don't really try to get away, and they let you know. If you're having problems with handling and things like that, then it's probably a symptom of something you're not doing. But especially when we start working with milks, like when Jade's in the dairy and we're doing cheeses and things like that, we have excess milks, and when you go up to the feed the weaners, they start to treat you like a mother in that way. And I don't know if you've ever had pets like dogs or cats. When they really want to be fed, they zip in front of your legs and try to trip you over and lead you to where they want to go. Just imagine doing that with 50, 20 kilo little animals. They all, and you have to really, they're so smart. You have to trick them in a different way. You've got to put a little bit there and then zip over and get it so that they don't, so they don't stick their faces in the way. And, you just got to do something different every day. But like I said, it surprises you daily what you actually have to work with and stuff like that.
What's special for you about being out on the farm?
I guess, the lifestyle. Like I said, when we, moved out here and the grace of meeting, chefs like Ben and then other profile chefs in the food industry, I guess I don't treat them like customers. I treat them like patrons, They are also passionate about knowing the roots of the food right back to the source. And we're so close to Brisbane, they can come out and have a look themselves, and they sort of have feeling like it's their own personal farm, and that inspires me as well every day. And and we get to, but through people like that, we get to live this lifestyle, and we get to try to better it every day, and every day make it better for them, and create different products and do different things. So, and they allow me that grace. So I reciprocate by trying to make that ultimate product, something that's completely different and something that constantly wows them. Hopefully, we can do all sorts of things on a small scale. Like a lot of chefs like to do a lot of nose to tail experience. So we can organise the offal of the whole exact pig that they're actually going to get by virtue of the fact that we have a really good relationship with our small abattoir, and we can actually afford them that luxury, so that it gives them that experience. And it's amazing what some of these chefs come up with when they play with some of those things.
It's a small family-run business. What are the challenges with what you do?
Weather, I guess, is the big thing. You work seasonally and you work with weather. We've had our main season is winter barley, and we've had 2 nice seasons in a row, which heartens you, and everything's working well. But for 4 years before that, we've had awful drought. Like the whole anyone in the eastern seaboard probably would repeat that story to you. But it was a very, very dark and hard time for and when it goes on and on and on, and you have to make welfare decisions and destocking decisions based on economics, and they're having to sell the animals that you love and work with, even though they've still got life in them, and then being offered cents for it because everyone else is doing the same thing. And but then there's absolute joy when the seasons change and then fortunes are possible. Anything's possible when you're coming into summer and the weather's right and the soil's full of water, and it just lifts the spirits then, and it's a very gratifying thing to watch a project go. It's very similar to architecture in that way. I liken it to it. You develop a project from concept to fruition, right from, I think I'm going to do this, and start that project and fulfill it over the course of a season or 2, and then reap it. And it's a very fulfilling thing to watch and nurture a project, even if it's horticultural, whether it's horticultural or meat. And we've dabbled, like when we started meeting restaurants, bar limes, for example, was a big thing that they have trouble getting out of season, funnily enough, at different times. So, we experimented by putting in 30 lime trees into a little orchard, and we still to this day supply limes down to our good friends down in Brisbane every now and then. But we worked out about that scale that, with our water availability and economy of, the needs of plant stuff, that it wasn't going to be for us, but we still have maintained that little 30 tree orchard that they can have, say once again, it's all product off the same terroir, the same single source.
Do you have any stories of the times you've experienced your own product in restaurants?
Oh, every time's an experience, like when we go down for an event or something nowadays, it's an opening or some sort of an event or something. It's a real experience for us. We get dressed up. We're going to Brisbane for the night or whatever, and the chefs are. Usually there's a lot of chefs in the same room, and they're all so passionate about the same thing, and especially just picking apart those dishes, picking apart those ingredients, and when they meet the farmer that's actually provided the product that's put on that plate, it's they're usually very intrigued, and you meet so many. We basically, we come back with full hearts, that's for sure. It inspires you to do the next project and go on to the next thing, and it keeps things ticking along. Every time, absolutely every time, I'm amazed. With pork, if you cook it correctly, it's really hard to muck up a small pig with the protein. But the thing is the crackle, and how they do, like with a younger pig, the crackle's a lot thinner, and it becomes and there's so many different ways to present it and pop it and stuff like that. It always amazes me every time what did they do with the crackle.
Was there a dish that stands out from a restaurant that you've experienced of your own product?
Oh, look, I mean, if I name drop anyone, I'll offend someone, Huck. Every time, I'm just amazed. They outdo each other every time. And look, I wouldn't be doing them justice to even try to describe the process, but it's amazing how many multi-day and multi-step process that they actually go through to produce sometimes what they put on the plate. It just, I look at, like I said, if I named anything, I'd be doing him injustice. But I mean, one that stands out when Benny came up for one of his last recipes, we did an interesting thing where we got a whole small pig and cured it in brine and smoked it like you do, like you do Christmas ham sort of thing. So about the same sort of kilos, but so that makes it pre-cooked. So we were able to enjoy the pig on the spit experience in like a 1 hour turnaround, as opposed to like what normally a 7 hour cook. And we got them to put that. I know sometimes you see at the commercial stores they can make a crackle on the ham, that you put it in the oven and the crackle actually pops. So. That was quite an experience, and they flagellated it with a lovely herbed oil on a piperina branch, and it just really clicked. It was a really interesting night what they put together that night. But yeah, that's one off the top of my head. I guess the other one was opening a Donna Chang. Jake Nicholson's restaurant he did when they opened that. We worked on a little project with Jake. I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to go, but it was ultimately a lactose diet only suckling pig. So we processed, and they had to be the smallest, smallest pigs we'd ever processed. They had to be done by hand, but they were as a pig gets older, it starts to enjoy the carbohydrates that its mums does, as well as the lactose, and the enzymes change over and the meat toughens up. But the really, really young ones that are just purely raised on milk alone, it's an absolute royal experience. And we put that together with Jake, and that's he entered us into the Delicious Awards that year, and sort of took us to another level. Another stage on a national level. But the opening of it and what they did with it at the start is just it was definitely memorable. That's for sure.
How has producing pigs changed your life?
Oh wow. I guess reflecting on it over the years, I guess you have to be very grateful. I guess grateful for the opportunity that I've been able to do this, to bring my kids out, raise them in a manner that my family has continued to do. And I mean, out here we're not an abnormal thing. There are still family farms owned by fifth generational families, still in continuity, selling it to the commercial market and doing it hard. And so we're not uncommon story. But they're getting rarer, fewer and far between. The agricultural industries, going down a mass consumer commercialization path where, economy of scale makes a big difference, and the small guys are slowly disappearing. But by us sort of at least bypassing a couple of steps in the commercial chain, by me going direct to my consumer, we're able to afford giving them an affordable product on par with what they are, and by taking out a couple of chains, it makes us able to be free of the commercial fluctuations of the market. Like when I produce a lot of pigs, so does everyone in the district, and the price is down. When I produce a lot of cows in the district, everyone else does. It goes down. When the barley's good, the price goes down. You put them through animals instead. You've got to make choices on the fly based on what's on the seasons, and also based on the market conditions and things. And by dealing direct with the customers, we can be free of a few of those fluctuations, and operate on a scale that's sort of not normally afforded.
You made a tree change, even though your family has that rich heritage and raising your family on the farm. What do you love about what you do and this change and the impacts that you've had on your family?
I guess it's, sound corny, it's for the children. We both have attitudes that, by growing your own food, at least you can be absolutely certain what's being put in your body, and doesn't really worry me so much. I'm old now, but I did want to be conscious of what my children had put in their body, and A lot of modern agricultural techniques aren't in line with, my personal ethos. Let alone the flavor aspect of it and stuff like that. But, look, I'm not, like I said before to people, we're not, organic, Nazi wankers or anything like that. I do appreciate the box of tricks and tools that real fertilizers and real sprays actually afford, but I don't like the prophylactic use of them in the commercial industry. And I like, and with a little bit of handwork, you can actually, you don't need those things. But I do also appreciate that's not the way you got to feed the world. So I'm not, we don't denigrate our industrial peers. For a little while, what we did was a bit of a marketing platform and things like that when we became a food service direct, business. But I learned a while ago not to denigrate our industrial peers because they're all tools in a box of tricks, and it's all about management.
It's amazing advice, Vaughn, and we've been honoured to have you today on the Crackling to hear just a bit of your story. Please keep in touch, and we'd love to catch up again soon.
I was very, very, blessed that you'd had us on, and it was nice to meet you. And I appreciate it. Appreciate it very much, mate.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.